so it's, a little bit on the quiet side, but believe me, when they kick in, it's heavy rain, it's winds gusting everything around, and you can even start to see some of these street signs swaying a little bit. But the area, again, that we're all our eyes on, an area so hard hit by Hurricane Laura just 43 days ago here. Tevin Wooten talking to us from Lake Charles, Louisiana. I apologize, I forgot to mention you at the top of the hour. I was trying to remember everybody. Apologies, buddy, because frankly, you got the biggest story out there. An area that has all these tarps, thousands of tarps that are under the influence of these 60-plus mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, man, this rain is just absolutely relentless. Let's take you to those tarps because there are so many. It's like a sea of blue tarps all throughout Lake Charles. In fact, I think we have aerial video of those tarps to show you, just so you can see how much this encompasses southwestern portions of southwestern portions of Louisiana and in Calcasieu Parish. So this is actually video of Lake Charles, where some of the water's crashing up, some of the surge, and some of the tarps as well. Look at the way that green tarp is just flapping in the wind. Here's your problem. That's one, but there are thousands of those out here in Lake Charles, in places like Orange, Texas, and also Port Arthur as well, because you have to remember with Laura, about 6 weeks ago, it wasn't just Lake Charles that saw impacts. Even though we saw the eye of the storm and the center of the storm move over, there were several different communities in and around Lake Charles, in Moss Bluff, down in Cameron that saw this. So we have to really keep southwestern Louisiana in mind and eastern portions of Texas too when we talk about going forward in the forecast and what Delta will now bring in, because this is taking a situation and upping it. The debris that's out there, the debris that's loosened, the power lines that were just fixed when people just got power a week or two ago, now they don't have power again, or now they may not have power again and likely won't have power again. All the power crews have pulled out because they have to get to safety and out of harm's way. They all have to come back in, so this is a very coordinated effort with first responders, with local officials, with utility crews, all to come in after the worst of Delta pulls out. But I think we're seeing the worst of Delta right now. Unfortunately, a lot of the observation sites, it seems like they are down, and that's understandable because the power has perhaps out in some spots, or it's too dangerous, or maybe some of the sensors aren't working right now. But I can tell you this, 60-mile-an-hour winds or 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts for a prolonged period of time from Delta, it's not just a hit or miss thing. We're seeing sustained winds near about 30 or 40 miles an hour, depending on where you are. So that'll happen for the next, we've already seen 3 or 4 hours. I think we've got another 3 or 4 more hours to go. We're not in the center. We're not on the north side of the storm. We're on the west side of the storm. So when you have a counterclockwise rotation, that is just sustaining, it's prolonged, and it's just holding itself together on the left-hand side just enough to sit and sorrow right over Lake Charles, Louisiana. So extremely unfortunate situation here. A lot of the people did evacuate. This was yesterday where we were watching people pile up on I-210 and I-10, and you should have seen the amount of cars as this exodus occurred throughout the day. It wasn't just a 1 or 2 hour spurts where you hit traffic sometimes and you're done. This was traffic that was sustained for about an hour or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on which roadway you were on. Even some of the bridges to get out of town to evacuate were piled up as well. Folks were heading mostly west when we talked to people because they didn't want to go east. If you're a hurricane-savvy person, which a lot of people that live along the Gulf Coast are, they didn't want to go to the east. They know that's the dirty side of the storm. They wanted to get away, so they went west. Mike, I talked to a couple that went as far west as Dallas, Texas. They didn't want to stop in Houston. They didn't want to stop at Katy. They wanted to get way out of the way of Delta. Thousands of folks did that. In fact, city officials, Mike, that we spoke to this morning said they think more people evacuated with this storm than Laura. So I think they're understanding the message here, and it's safe to say they certainly are.
100%, and those folks, if you've got the means and you've got the ability to do it, by all means, go ahead and evacuate. If it takes you to Dallas, then it takes you to Dallas, right? Tevin, thanks so much for the update. Want to give you an update on what's happening with the storm. Currently, we're going to get hourly updates from the Hurricane Center now through landfall. The wind's down to 100 miles per hour, Category 2, northeast movement at 14 miles per hour. And you're now starting to see the northern edge of the eye is coming ashore right now. So you're going to see the winds back off. You're going to see the rain back off. But a place like Creole and Grand Chenier. It looks like you're about to go right into the eye here momentarily, but really heavy rain is all on the north side of the system, and we're anticipating a lot of degradation of the storm here short term, especially over the next 24 hours. By tomorrow morning, we're probably down to a tropical storm, then accelerating off into the mid-south and then the Tennessee Valley. There's a look at some of the winds that we're dealing with right now. In Houma, 43 gusts. New Orleans, we're gusting to 40. As high as wind gusts have we seen in any tropical system so far this year in New Orleans. I'm going to show you what's going on, by the way, in Creole. Let's take a live picture. I was mentioning that the eye was coming ashore there. Look at the winds. They've gone calm now. Look at the water. It's almost pancake flat at this point. So it looks like we've now gotten into the eye in Creole, Louisiana. It's going to be just east of Cameron. And this is going to be probably what we deal with for a couple of hours. I think we'll be in the eye for 2-3 hours here, and then we'll get the southern eye wall that comes through. Although the southern eye wall doesn't have a lot of rain with it, but you'll see the winds start to pick back up a little bit. But interesting to see that we are now going, from gusts as high as 70+ miles an hour in some spots to dead calm in a place like Creole. It just shows you, boy, the dynamics of a hurricane. They never cease to amaze, right? Lake Charles, gusts right now nearly 50. Port Arthur, our gusts are at 62 miles an hour. We're on the western side of the storm. There's a little bit of convergence going on there. We've actually seen some of the highest winds in that area. Louisiana power outages now pushing about 50,000. Same for us in Texas. So we're getting closer and closer to 100,000 customers without power. And we think this area from coastal Louisiana up along I-10, right in the core of the hurricane force winds, most likely to see the widespread power outages, but forecast power outages could go all the way up into, say, Monroe. There's a look at the wind forecast, and as this thing comes ashore, we're going to start to see friction breakdown, wind shears taking over, so that's starting to tear the storm up. But a northeast movement here takes it over I-20 about 7 o'clock in the morning, so I'd avoid being on I-10 or I-20 now through at least lunchtime tomorrow. Flash flood warnings in effect right now with the gusty winds and the heavy rain. It's just a miserable, miserable time right now. So you're hunkered down and you're just staying put. That's all you need to do right now. Calcasieu, Cameron, Jefferson Davis Parish, all under flash flood warnings. In the Beaumont and Port Arthur areas, we're also under flash flood warnings. Very flood-prone location. We're getting some training storms there. They're just not moving. They're stationary. Jefferson and Orange counties under flash flood warnings. Stephanie Abrams is live for us tonight in Jennings, Louisiana. It looks like, Steph, you're gonna be in this rough stuff for the next couple of hours. And then we think that eye's going to come potentially right over top of you there in Jennings.
Mike, just to the south of us in Lake Arthur, we have sustained winds of 65 gusting to 82 miles an hour. That's that eye wall. And Lake Arthur's only about 11 miles from where we're located. And you can see it's gotten a lot worse for us. So we are getting into that eye wall. Mike was just showing you Creole, Louisiana, which is just to our south, say 60 to 70 miles right along the coast. They are in the eye. So the National Hurricane Center will call landfall of this system. It's right where that center of the actual hurricane crosses over. Will it be Creole, Louisiana? Will it be just east or west of there? They will make that call. Within the eye, you have the lowest pressure. And I've been watching, that is my pressure reading here on my anemometer. And we started at 991, and now we're dropping down to 989.4. So our pressure is dropping as we're getting near that eye. And Mike, this eye, it doesn't look like it's going to be a clear eye, meaning that you can see a clear sky above you. It's a little bit on the dirty side because it's getting torn apart.
I think we're getting plenty of overcast in that eye. It won't be that classic eye where you're looking up at sunshine or blue skies. That's just not going to happen, Steph. We actually haven't seen that clear eye since sometime yesterday afternoon, but you'll feel it. That'll be the thing. It'll be overcast overhead, but you're going to feel the winds just relax almost instantaneously, right?
You will. And so right now, and Bettis, you'd have a better idea being in the studio and being able to determine exactly how far we are from the worst weather. Again, down just 11 miles from a sustained in the 60s, gusting higher than that. How long that takes to reach us, and then how long we'll be in it. That's what a lot of people want to know. This system, Mike, it's been moving at a good clip. I mean, it's a little above average when you talk about how the forward speed, the average forward speed of a hurricane, it's typically around that 11, 12, 13 miles per hour on average, and this has been on the higher end of that its whole life, really.
Steph, I'm putting the measurement on here on the radar, just kind of estimating about where you are, where the northern fringe of the eye is. You're about roughly 30 miles away, so I'd say it's about 2 hours before you get into the calm winds again. But between now and then, you're going to have the roughest stuff. I think the next 2 hours is the roughest weather that you'll see there in Jennings. And then after that, it'll go calm. And after that, the backside of the storm, the southern side of the storm, doesn't actually offer up that bad of weather, believe it or not.
No, and it kind of reminds me of Sally, Mike. When Sally was coming ashore, that northern eye wall was rough, and that's what did all the damage. And then that western eye wall, it was open, it was a lot weaker. And so the good news for the people who are going to experience this northern eye wall is that will be the worst of your weather. It will calm, and then you'll feel it. Mike, there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I could feel in Sally, the wind shifted. We're getting that east wind, right? On the northern side, it passes. We'll get a west wind. The wind comes from the west, but thankfully it won't be as strong. So if anything does loosen, it won't then have another opportunity to be tossed about.
I think the good news here is that this thing weakened at just the right time, right? We've seen it weaken over the last several hours, right? And we thought, gosh, it's going to be such a close call. It's going to weaken before landfall, at landfall, after landfall. What will the winds be? We were concerned about folks in Lake Charles that got a lot of tarps on their roofs, right? Are those all going to be ripped off? How much wind damage is there going to be, considering we're looking at a Category 3 hurricane? I think the big thing now is, I think we're starting to see some degradation of the winds, which is great. I think we might actually reduce the amount of structural damage that we see, but we're still getting strong surge here. You know, we're looking at the canal locks there. We're now setting our second highest surge behind only Hurricane Ike. Steph, and I look at Calcasieu Pass, 5th highest surge now, and we've still got some to go here. So this is the other big concern, how much water inundation we're going to get in some of these marsh areas that are right at the coastline.
And you know, Ben, Mike, it's been a long time since we've had a Category 2 landfall in Louisiana. Look at the winds, just like that, Ben. It's just like that. That shows you the forward progression and how quickly things can deteriorate with this storm. I mean, you saw it just live on air, but I wanted to make the point, Mike, that we have not had a Category 2 October landfall in Louisiana since 1964. That was Hilda. So it's been a while this late in the season to have a storm like this in Louisiana. As it comes ashore, Mike, it's going to be setting records. A 10th storm to make landfall. We've never had 10 named storms. The record was 9 in 1960. And then here in Louisiana as well, it'll be the 5th hurricane, I should say, to make landfall in the U.S. This happened back in 2005. So this is a record setter, and it's already setting some records. You know, that surge is rising up along the coast.
Yeah, it really is. This will be the 4th landfall in Louisiana this year. That'll tie a record. And it's just, I mean, the numbers just keep adding up here, unfortunately. And Louisiana seems like it's been the unfortunate target so far this year. But Steph, you're now in the northern eye wall. I think you're going to get the worst weather here, the worst gusts then too, the highest rainfall rates, the worst gusts here over the course of the next, I'd say, hour and a half to 2 hours. And I think after that, you might be able to breathe a bit of a sigh of relief along I-10 here. And I know that was really a big concern. You know, if we can hold off on the water getting all that way, and I think we can. And I say that because the winds have started to back off quite a bit. We might not see the high-end surges of these forecasts. It might be mid-range or low-range of some of the forecasts.
Yeah. You know, Mike, one of the things that's going to happen is that visibility is going to continue to drop. And I just wanted to show for our viewers, there's a water tower. Hopefully you can pick it up on camera. I want to make sure my photographer is comfortable coming out. And you can see that water tower and the visibility that will be going down as the winds continue to increase. And that forward speed is really helping us here because we don't anticipate too much flooding. I know Mike was talking about that water rise, but it's more going to be that wind-driven rain. And Mike was talking about all the tarps, all the debris with Laura. We were affected by Laura here. Now, we didn't have widespread damage, obviously, like we saw in Lake Charles, but there are some homes with blue tarps on their roofs, and we will look after those. And we were showing you earlier as we were walking around the corner, there was a home around the corner with a blue tarp. But here you go. The winds just kick up that fast. And I don't know if Mike can show you the radar, or they can pull up the radar next to me to see that difference of what it looks like on the radar versus what we're experiencing. And we're going to be going through this for about an hour or so, the bulk of the strongest winds in this northern eye wall, and then we'll see that calm like they're seeing down in Creole, Louisiana, Mike. You know,
I was trying to measure it once more for you, Steph, because I think you're going to be in the strong band for roughly, it's about the edge of the strong band is about 24 miles until you get into the eye, all right? So that's going to come to I-10 probably about the next hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. But Steph's going to be riding this one out along with the rest of our meteorologists. More live coverage of Delta after this.
Is that
And we are now getting into the worst of the weather with Hurricane Delta, our first hurricane with a Greek name to make landfall in the lower 48. And I want to show you, I mean, you can see me standing up. Obviously, we're seeing some gustier winds. We've seen a gust here to 44 miles an hour. And to our south, about 11 miles, Lake Arthur, just 11 miles. They've seen winds sustained 65, gusting to 85. And that is all rotating up to me. So we haven't even gotten the worst of it yet. But look what's already happened. Anything that's top heavy is going to fall over, and you see that this has totally cracked. This definitely happened during the storm because we've been over here, and I did not see that earlier. We were talking about those other planters. Remember, 2 of them are already toppled. Another one has come over. So objects like this is what we're starting to see cause problems. Visibility. Remember just a little bit ago, we were talking with Mike Bettis, if you were with us, and I was talking about a water tower. You can't see it. Can you see it? You can barely see it. That's that visibility, that wind-driven rain. It is basically obscured. And how about this? Look at the wind and the rain on this building. You see how it's flying up? Look at how it's hitting the building and flying up and over the building. Obviously, the higher you go up in elevation, the stronger the winds you're going to get because the less friction that you'll be encountering. All right, let's go now off to my east and check in with Mike Seidel. And Mike, we're starting to see conditions deteriorate where we are. Have you seen any changes in the last, let's say, 20 to 30 minutes?
We have indeed, Stephanie. In fact, that same northern eye wall extends over to the south of us and extends down towards New Iberia. They've gusted to 60 miles an hour, and they're southwest of Lafayette. We're just on the west side of Lafayette. We're about 35 miles due east of where Stephanie is in Jennings. So the wind's now blowing parallel to I-10, east to west. Lake Charles about an hour that way. We're getting rainfall, not as heavy as we've seen. We've already had 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. Mentioned earlier, flash flood warnings from Lafayette stretching to Beaumont, Port Arthur in Texas. We have very little traffic on the highway. That's good tonight. Everything here is closed. Now the concern is when that band comes in, as Stephanie mentioned, the worst of the weather, and that's where we're going to see the worst of the weather here in Lafayette Parish. By the way, now, about 65,000 customers in Louisiana have lost power, about 115 when you throw in Texas. Those numbers are gradually coming up. We don't expect the numbers we had with Laura because we're not going to have those kind of winds, but still, you got 70, 80 mile an hour wind gusts with a wet ground. You're going to have uprooted trees and power going out. Water standing all over the place. We're expecting another maybe inch of rain or so when that band comes through, and then the rain will pretty much wind down for the evening. Once the center goes north of 10, our winds will come around to the southwest. It will be a very windy night here in Louisiana, although the strongest winds will move on because they usually come down with the squalls, those tropical squalls. So Stephanie, we're watching the same line that you're watching. You're going to be more in the meat of it. You should get stronger wind gusts. So far here, we've gusted to 48 miles an hour. Last time with Laura, 60 was the peak gust. So we're hoping that we don't do any higher than that because with that last time, we didn't have a whole lot of power outages. Stephanie, back to you down the road in Jennings.
Let's go down the road now to Cameron Parish, which is right on the coast. And, of course, that is where we had significant damage in that 17.5 feet water rise from Hurricane Laura. I want to bring in Ron Johnson, the police chief there. And, Ron, I was just trying to look at the radar, and it seems like you guys are getting into some calmer weather. But what was it like when you went through that eye wall in Cameron Parish?
Well, we stayed down there as long as possible. We had pulled the deputies out of the lower part of the parish and put them in the upper part of the parish until we started getting stronger tropical storm force winds. And then we moved up into Calcasieu Parish and such. We did leave a skeleton crew down there, and we will be back down in just a few hours as soon as the wind subsides just a little bit. But there is a storm surge down there. And we have debris flying, and, of course, blue torch flying off the roof. Hardest hit areas, of course, will be Grand Chenier, Lowry, and Klondike. Lowry and Klondike is in our parish, and it's over there about where you're at in the Lake Arthur area.
Okay, so have you had any reports of anyone needing any help or water getting into homes? What reports have you gotten out of that area?
We haven't had any reports of that yet. We do have a major and a deputy down there on the east side in the Grand Lake area, but they have seen some yards flooded, and I don't know past that if the water is actually in the houses or not yet.
All right. Well, Ron Johnson, we certainly appreciate you coming on and giving us that report. And, you know, once again, here it goes. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse as that band rotates in. So now is the time that everyone needs to stay put, and we are staying safe out here to bring you the latest updates on what is happening here, not only in Jennings, but all along Louisiana and inland as well, because all the rain is on that north side. You guys will experience that heavy rain inland into places like Tennessee, too. We have got you covered here before, during, and we'll be there for you after the storm.
Friday night pizza for
It's your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
All right, guys, looking at live pictures here coming out of Lake Arthur, Louisiana. Believe it or not, this is actually about 30 miles inland. And the folks at the University of Florida, Forrest Masters and his meteorology group, have an anemometer down there, kind of a mobile anemometer. They've gusted to 82 miles per hour on that. Dills, if it's higher, let me know. But you can see they're right in the eye wall, all right? So big time. This is Severe Studios. They're down there driving around, and you can certainly see everything kind of swing. That color, 96. They just, oh my goodness. So now we're at 96 miles an hour in this thing. So this is the eye wall. This is the worst part, of the hurricane, certainly coming ashore now. Thank you, Sarah, for telling me that. And, obviously, be careful out there, guys, driving around, because John Humphreys and crew, a lot of power lines, a lot of trees certainly could come on down your way. But that's the kind of weather that we are going to get in the eye wall. Now, how much of that remains as it gets up into Stephanie, the meat of that? All right, let's find out. So Steph's just getting into the northern part of that. So Steph, again, just 96 miles an hour down there at Lake Arthur now with gusts. You're obviously seeing the gusts ramp up there where you are in Jennings, which is about 38 miles to my west.
Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me, Cantori? We're getting crushed right now with the rain and the wind ripping down the street. Visibility has dropped significantly. We're watching the power lines. It seems as if power is still on, but obviously we are getting into the worst of it. Officially, we have gusted to 49 miles an hour. Now, this is all rotating up from the south, and we have seen winds south of here in Lake Arthur gusting to 85 miles an hour, sustained at 65. So it's going to be coming through us here as we head through the next hour, that wind right out of the east. And that's what you get when you're on the northern eye wall of these storms. And by the way, when you say an east wind, that means the wind comes from the east and goes west. And that's exactly what we are seeing here. That is east and that is west. And so we're watching trees. We've already seen minimal damage. If you keep watching, we'll take you to the other corner. We are mobile. We are able to walk around this town and show you what is happening with the wind. That is by far the strongest gusts we've seen so far. I anticipate to continue to see those and perhaps some stronger ones as we go over the next hour. But overall, the type of damage that we're seeing is big planters, just huge planters have been toppled over. Some of them have broken because they landed on the street. That's the only damage that we're seeing so far. Otherwise, it's just the rain picking up and the wind getting stronger and having to brace ourselves with some of that stronger wind. There's been little bits of debris flying around, and that's it. Now, we were affected by Hurricane Laura here. There are some areas with blue tarps. We want to take you to Lake Charles and find out how they're faring, because there's been a lot of blue tarps flapping in the winds. I believe we have just live pictures. Okay, we're not able to speak to them. We have live pictures of Lake Charles, and they have power lines down. The problem is, speaking of power, by the way, we have over 110,000 people without power between Texas and Louisiana. So the storm is taking out power. Lake Charles, everyone's heart goes out to everyone in Lake Charles, because they have just been trying to get back up on their feet, and now they're dealing with this. And we do have Kevin Wooten there. We'll go live to him to talk about how they are faring. Are the tarps staying in place? The ones that I've seen here around this neighborhood are pretty solid on their roofs, but it doesn't take a lot to get a little piece of wind under one of those tarps and start ripping it and flapping it around. And we're going to be in this for for a little bit of time here, right? At least an hour, if not longer. And so the good news about this system is that it is moving quite quickly. So we're not going to sit in this for 3-4 hours because of that forward movement has been very fast its entire lifespan, 12, 13, 14, even 17 miles an hour at times, which is on the higher end of the average forward speed of a hurricane. So the fact that it's moving through quickly will be good because that will keep flooding to a minimum. Some places will flood, but of course that water is getting pushed up ahead of the storm, and we have seen significant water rise at the coast. The other thing we're waiting for is it does look like it's making landfall, so we just have to wait for the National Hurricane Center to make that call. Are they going to call it in Creole, Louisiana? It doesn't matter, but that center of circulation is coming ashore. It will eventually get to us, but we have to go through this first, the worst of the weather. The good news with this storm is it is front-end loaded. The rain, the strongest winds is all on the front end of this system. So once we get into that eye, on the back side of this, we don't have to worry about going through another significant eye wall. So that is the one positive with this system. What we're dealing with now, it's still light out. We can see. Once the sun sets, at least for us here in southern Louisiana, things will start getting better. Unfortunately, for our friends inland, it won't be the same. All right, we want to show you live pictures now. We have it all along the coast here. Lake Arthur, this is where the latest report we had, sustained at 65, gusting to 85. This is about 11 miles to our south. That's it. The weather there is coming right back up to us. Look at these gusts.
With the capital.
Port Arthur, we've been gusted to 96 miles an hour. That weather is rotating up to us. And Port Arthur is, I should say Lake Arthur, excuse me. Lake Arthur, which is 11 miles to our south, gusting to 96 miles an hour. The weather there is rotating right up to us. So we can look and see what's happening in Lake Arthur. I know we have a camera there. We are taking, here and there and see what weather will be coming our way. But it's pretty bad. I mean, we went downhill very quickly. Say that one more time about the damage. Okay, you're seeing the damage in Lake Arthur. And what caused that will be making its way to us. It's going to last about 30 minutes here, the worst of the weather, and then we will get into the eye of this hurricane. Now, I want to show you around and what it's looking like here. And the visibility is key. We were showing you earlier that water tower. That gives you an idea of just how bad it is here. And you see the winds just driving that rain down the street, knocking over big planters. We have this one here. Anything that's top heavy is getting knocked over right now. Really not flooding that we're concerned about here. Obviously, you're seeing a little bit of that rain accumulating, but I'm not concerned about significant flooding. But if you just look down the street, look at the trees whipping around. The power lines, it seems as if there is still power in this neighborhood. From what I can tell, I see lights on a house down there. And I do know that this area was affected by Laura, and there are some homes with blue tarps. So we will check on those homes later. And there were some debris piles with trees and whatnot that it seemed as if there was cleanup for Laura. We want to now go to Lake Charles and check in with Charles Peak. And he was there for Hurricane Laura and is now there again. Charles, have the tarps been flapping in the wind, or have they been able to stay and protect these homes?
Steph, in some cases, both. I've run across quite a few of them where they're being ripped off of homes and businesses. Some of them have additional boarding that they put on and seem to be faring okay, but winds have been really picking up here in the last little bit, so we'll have to see how the rest of them hold up.
Let's talk about the power, Charles, because Louisiana and Texas, we're talking over 110,000 customers, a lot more people, 110,000 customers without power. And I just saw Tevin Wooten, who's there with you. He tweeted that they lost power in Lake Charles. Have you seen a lot of power lines down, and can you even distinguish between damage from Laura and damage from this storm?
In some cases, it's a little difficult on the side roads, but the main roads, I've had several situations where you've got poles leaning over or almost completely down, bringing power lines down, and those situations on some of the major arteries through here. So I would feel pretty confident that that is fresh damage that's going on. But in some of the other areas right where I'm at, I see a street light on here, so they've got power here, but it is sporadic throughout the town as it continues to deteriorate.
Okay, so let's talk about the rain. You guys have been getting rain for a while. Have you seen any flooding or problems with the rainwater so far?
Yeah, Stephanie, I just came through back just a few blocks to my east where many of the roads there, they're the side roads, but they're as deep as 2 foot of water. They're running sort of like a river down the roads. And so a lot of the streets are flooded at this time.
Now, what about the debris? We know that there have been a lot of piles of debris around there. Have you seen debris starting to fly yet?
In some cases, mainly it's been the sheet metal type stuff that's so easy to pick up. I haven't seen any tree limbs blowing at this point in time, but some street signs, the metal type stuff have seen blowing in various locations.
All right, Charles, we certainly appreciate you chatting with us here, and we'll be checking in with you throughout the duration of the storm. And there's our strongest wind gust. Now we're feeling it. I was kind of waiting for this. I knew this was going to be coming in from Lake Arthur, where they were gusting up to 96 miles an hour. I'm now at the point in the storm where the rain feels like pebbles on your face. That's how fast and how strong it is hitting any exposed skin. A little bit of a lull, and then it's going to, we just gusted to 62 miles per hour here in Jennings. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got some gusts even higher than that, because you can tell now, even from just last 15 minutes, things have gotten worse, and they get, they deteriorate pretty quickly. We can show you the trees that are swaying in the wind here, and down the street, the visibility is awful, just sheets of rain going down. So far, the damage has been minimal. But of course, this is something we'll continue to watch for. I see there's a little debris in the road over here. Just a little piece of something. I'm not quite sure what it is. I could try walking down there and checking it out. But otherwise, when it comes to rainfall here, look, you can't really drive easily through this street because this is all water. This is the type of water that if you go too fast in your car, then you could run into problems because of that standing water on the ground here. But just down the street, notice that visibility, and everything is coming from the east. All right, so we have the east wind, east blowing towards the west because of the counterclockwise nature of a hurricane. That will shift as the storm moves inland, and our winds will shift from the west to the east. That will come much later. We'll be right back with more.
Your journey.
South of Lake Arthur. That weather's coming right up towards us. We've seen gusts up to 62 miles per hour here, but I'll tell you, looking at the radar, we definitely have some stronger winds coming towards us. I'm wide open right now. This is a street that is running east-west, so we are just getting the brunt of the winds coming down the street. And what I just want to show you, for instance, where my photographer is standing, just to give you an example of what happens when you go behind a wind. Voila, look at that. So my photographer is completely protected and not feeling a thing. You step out away from the building because the wind is coming from the east, he's totally blocked, and you get creamed. And so that's one of the things with these hurricanes, is depending on where your home or business is set up, which direction is it facing, that can also determine the type of damage that you're going to experience because of the different winds that you're getting. All right, we want to go to Tevin Wooten, who is in Lake Charles, Louisiana, just off to my west. And I know, Tevin, you're experiencing some bad weather, and I saw you tweeting that you just lost power. Is that just where you guys are, or do you think it's widespread?
Steph, so you know exactly where I am. You were standing right here when Hurricane Laura came through and made landfall. We're at the Golden Nugget, so we're just off the interstate here. We lost power at about 5:30. That as a 75-mile-an-hour wind gust came through, and that knocked out power at least to here at this property and the neighboring property, which is the LeBaire. So I can't speak for the entire town, although I do think about 18,000 customers. And it looks like we just lost portions of power. Again, it looks like about 18,000 customers, though, in Calcasieu Parish are without power. I expect that number, and I anticipate that number to go higher, along with some of the strongest wind gusts that do move in today. Also, speaking of strong, the rainfall has been relentless, so much so that we have broken a daily rainfall record. 7.5 inches is how much rain has fallen today. A lot of that, Steph, has actually fallen within the last, I would say, 3 or 4 hours. So what happens is when you get these tropical systems, and you know this because you're going through it right now, you get these tropical downpours and these squalls that come through, and they perhaps have rainfall rates that are maybe an inch and a half per hour. That leads to the flash flooding. And of course, the worst part of that here is knowing that a lot of folks' homes that got damaged in Laura, they were tarped and perhaps partially fixed, and now Delta's coming through to finish the job. Steph.
You know, Tevin, here, we just got a big wind gust, and that was the strongest we've had so far, and I anticipate more of that. We just had a gust with my anemometer. Again, this is unofficial, and I'm just out here in the street. 29-mile-per-hour gust, officially gusted to 62, but I can guarantee you if that was on an official gauge, it would have been a lot higher. Tevin, we have seen little bits and pieces of debris flying around, tiny pieces of metal, cardboard boxes. Have you seen any debris flying around yet where you're located?
Overall, what we wanted to do, Steph, before this storm, we wanted to stage in the proper position, so we didn't see debris, so I can't speak to what I've seen other than maybe a few twigs here or there and then a bushel of leaves or two. But I do want to let you know visibility has been significantly reduced. If you were to take a look behind me, you can't see a thing, which is about maybe, you see that red light right there that's flashing? Wait for it. It's a sign along the Calcasieu River. You can probably see that. That's maybe 60 yards, and that's about it. Typically, you'd be able to see the industrial plant that has a flame. That's about a mile to a mile and a half away. You can't see that, though, because of the heavy rainfall. But, Steph, the winds, I'm now noticing a shift in my wind direction here. It was almost north or northeast, and now we're almost in that east-northeast. So starting to take on more of an easterly component as Delta moves northbound now and northeast. What are you seeing in your wind direction shift and overall your wind direction change?
We've had that due east wind here being on the northern side of the storm, but of course as it rotates around, your winds are going to be shifting direction, and it has been blinding rain here. You cannot see that water tower anymore, and you can see the rain and the wind and how strong it is over the building, and gusts like this that sometimes just pick you up almost off your feet, and you have to kind of brace yourself, and then you're fine standing, and then you get a stronger gust, and you kind of have to brace yourself. Trees are still standing from what I can see here. Power is still on from what I can see here. Of course, in Lake Charles, it's a much more precarious situation with the power, even though we were affected by Laura here as well. It wasn't as bad at all, but there are some areas with blue roofs. So we are going to continue to be in it here for the next 20, 30 minutes. Stronger gusts, and then you get a little bit of a break, and then stronger as well. But this is it. This is the worst of the weather that we are going to see into Jennings. It's all going to continue to move inland. Northern portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, into Tennessee. You guys are next in line for Hurricane Delta, the first hurricane on record with a Greek name to make landfall. We're going to be back with more live reports all along the Gulf Coast. The eye wall of Category 2 Hurricane Delta. Watch out, there's debris flying, watch out. All right, it's okay, it went down the other way. We're all right, you're all right. You just catch it out of the corner of your eye. So there is is debris that is starting to fly. We'll have to go down there and see what it is. Signs, I just saw another sign get ripped off. We are in the heart of this storm, the eye wall, where we have the worst of the winds. We'll be in it for at least another 30 minutes, and then we get into the eye, the calm of it. So what we're dealing with now, this will be it. We are not going to have to deal with another strong eye wall on the south side of it. We have had winds just to our south in Lake Arthur, gusting to 96 miles an hour. Here we've seen them gusting over 60, but I got to tell you, with what I've experienced, even just in the last 30 minutes, we have definitely seen winds higher than that, even if the official anemometer hasn't gotten it. They have seen winds sustained also to the south of us as in the 60-mile-an-hour range, sustained and gusting 80, 90 miles an hour. This is coming ashore. So remember, we're just waiting for the National Hurricane Center to make the call of landfall. Now, I'm thinking that's going to happen much sooner than later because we are seeing some areas like Creole, Louisiana, in the center of that circulation, but we have to wait until the exact center of that hurricane crosses onto the shore, onto the coast, and that's when we will see them call landfall for us. But conditions are about as worse as they're going to get. This is what we are going to deal with, and then it's going to be going north of I-10, and then we are going to see this eye wall, thankfully, as it is, dealing with the shear and interacting with the land, which is more friction, which hurricanes do not like. We will see it deteriorate more. So we are taking it on the chin here, but as it continues to pull north, you're going to start to see this thing wind down, but it takes a little bit of time for it to do that. Off into my east in Lake Charles, we have Tevin Woon there. He has reported they've lost power. It is spotty there. There have been power lines that have been down there. Right now, where we are, I still see lights on down the street, so there is certainly still power here, but there are blue tarps on roofs as Hurricane Laura did cause some damage. The trees are swaying. I do not see, at least where I'm located, any trees down. This is mainly what we're seeing. Anything that is top heavy and not too sturdy has been knocked over, and you can see this planter. And let me tell you, if that's the worst of the damage we're going to get here, we will be happy to see that. All right, we officially have landfall. It has been called by the National Hurricane Center, Hurricane Delta, and Creole, Louisiana is what we were expecting. So this makes it now the 10th tropical system to make landfall in the U.S. That sets a new record. The old record was 9, and that record's been standing since 1916. That just tells you how rare it is to see this. And by the way, for our state record, in 2002, we had 4 landfalls, Bertha, Hannah, Isidore, and Lily. And we now got our 4th landfall here. So we tied the record in Louisiana for landfalls. There was Cristobal, Marco, and Laura earlier in the season. And this is now our 4th landfall here in the state of Louisiana. A record-setting season, 25 named storms. The record, of course, is 28 that was sent back in that notorious 2005 season. And it's just been also the fact that all these named storms are coming well ahead of schedule as well. It's something like 22 out of 25 named storms were ahead of schedule. There's your wind. There's your wind. There's your wind-driven rain. This is starting to tear little pieces, bits and pieces of signs off here on Main Street. And as you look, the water tower we've been picking has a good sign of visibility. And that you just cannot see, barely at all. You can see the trees also kind of leaning over there. It's distant, but the visibility has really dropped. And when it comes to water, I don't know how far away I can get from my photog, and maybe you won't be able to see me because the visibility is that bad. He's giving me the thumbs up. You can still see and hear me. This is the type of water that we're seeing accumulating on the roads. And so we don't have tremendous flooding. Except when you get water accumulation. That wind is strong enough where it's tough to breathe sometimes and can take you off your feet. Then you get a little low. Woo!
Everybody going through, Stephanie is in the northern eye wall of Jennings. Right now, I think we're kind of losing her mic there, so we'll take it, get you caught up. But she's obviously going through the northern eye wall there. This is the same band that produced a verified now 96-mile-per-hour wind gust down at Lake Arthur, Louisiana, which is just to Stephanie south. So NHC mentioned that in their update as an official gust. So we've gotten now, again, the circulation center coming on shore. We've had an official landfall at Creole right around 6 o'clock local time here. Here we are at about 15 minutes past the hour. And I want to show you the band that Stephanie's going through. I'm up in Bro Bridge, so I'm about 38 miles or so to the northeast of where she is. But it's important because this band, it may not have 96 anymore, but it's going to have winds that could knock out power. All right. So, as we show you that, I just want to get everybody caught up. We're kind of timing it out almost like a squall line now. So you can see the different towns that are going to be in this, like Cowley. Seidel's going to get this, if you will, and Scott. He's going to have to deal with that, and maybe even West Lafayette will deal with this. So we'll see how long it holds together as it continues to move ashore. But many, many cameras out there. We can show you what's going on. Again, the Jennings camera obviously going through the eye wall, the Lake Charles camera, watching the tarps. Just one of thousands of these just flapping in the wind here with Charles Peak's camera. Of course, the problems in Abbeville with the storm surge. Now at freshwater, 7.9 feet. So that verifies exactly what the Hurricane Center was talking about with the 7 to 11 feet there with that storm surge. So water still holding its own now with that onshore wind and with that southeast wind, even with the center coming ashore. This will start to go down a little bit as the center and the eye wall starts to move a little bit further to the northeast. So hang in there, guys. We still got a little ways to go here, Mike Bettis, with this thing, but kind of amazing just seeing that northern eye wall ripple on shore, almost more like a squall line, if you will, than something we saw with Laura, which was almost a perfect circular beast coming ashore.
Yeah, this is a little different. We've got a pretty ragged eye at this point, and very well put there, Jim. More like a squall line, kind of coming south to north here, and I think it comes across I-10 here over the course of the next hour or so. What could be interesting, Jim, is I think that you, Mike Seidel, Stephanie Abrams, and potentially even Tevin could all simultaneously be in the eye at the same time because it's expanded a little bit here. I'm interested to see if you and Tevin might actually bookend it and maybe potentially be in a deteriorating eye wall while Steph and Mike might be in the eye, but you all have, I think, at least a chance of being in the eye simultaneously, which would be amazing to see four of you all at the same time with
that really would be, Mike. That really would be. And, of course, the other thing, too, is once we all get in that, or that I-10 corridor point south gets into it, that's it with the worst of the weather.
Yeah.
Because we know the south side of this thing is just completely collapsed, right?
Yeah, it's empty. The wind shear is taking everything off to the north here. Yeah. I'm still a little bit surprised that they're holding on to the 100-mile-per-hour winds, but I think it's going to come down pretty quickly from this point going forward. And I think that if it could have made landfall anywhere in Louisiana, this was as good a spot. Now, and why I say that, Jim, is it basically made landfall in a wildlife refuge. There are a handful of homes down there on Grand Chenier Highway, but if there were going to be a spot, this would be the spot.
Yeah, that's certainly a little bit of a silver lining here, Mike, but I think the calling card of this is going to be Lake Charles in the fact that you can trace this all the way back to COVID. They're not making enough shingles. The labor's ready to put them on, but if they're not there, you can't put them on. And so thousands and thousands of these tarps, unfortunately, just kind of sitting there and flapping in the wind. And in some cases, they may have started the indoor part of the project, all right, sheetrock and things like that. Now you've undermined that and have to start from scratch and maybe even have a worse problem because of losing that tarp. So it's going to be really interesting to follow the after story in Lake Charles here. They may be farther behind in spots than they were to start with, I think, even just after Laura.
You kick them while they're down, and it's just not fair. It just truly is not. 6 weeks later, we're going through it all again, and we're looking at the images on the screen there, Jim. We maybe even listen to them a little bit. The winds now starting to rip up a lot of these blue tarps that are on roofs, protecting homes from intrusion of rain, but now they're wet on the outside and the inside, unfortunately. And as Jim was alluding to, we do officially have landfall. Near Creole, Louisiana is Category 2, winds at 100 miles per hour. Pressure's coming up a little bit here, Jim, at 970 millibars. We think it's going to start to degrade here pretty quickly, but overall, the course of action from this point going forward is improvements, okay? We know that we've got still 100-mile-per-hour winds officially, although we haven't seen any winds to that strength measured quite yet. But I would anticipate that we could have a decent amount of wind still to go here before this is done, but mostly here on the northern side. Again, north-northeast movement at 14 miles per hour. A lot of flash flood warnings are in effect right now, so we've had some places record already already, half a foot of rain today. Now, here's the key thing. I'm going to point out a couple things. So Tevin Wooten sits in here. Stephanie Abrams right here in Jennings. Mike Seidel's in Scott. Jim Cantor over here in Breaux Bridge. And you can see the outline of the eye is about that. So a northeast movement like that could literally put all 4 of our live meteorologists in the eye simultaneously. The worst of the weather is happening right here around Jennings, and we're getting a pretty decent blast of weather around us, around Scott as well. But let's get you over to Lake Charles. Our Justin Michaels is there this evening. Things rocking and rolling on I-10 tonight. Justin, give us an update there.
Hey, I'll tell you what, right now, conditions are not great here, Mr. Mike Bettis. We know we could be in the western eye wall for quite a long time, maybe another hour, 2 hours. So as this thing continues to push off to the northeast, we still have a lot of weather to go through here in Lake Charles. I heard you in your conversation with Jim Cantori about the conditions here in the next couple days, weeks, months, as they were still cleaning up from Laura. I can tell you, driving around Lake Charles over the last few days, all you see is blue tarps, all you see are piles of debris. It's hard to imagine that this city over the last 6 weeks since Laura went through did remove 1.54 million cubic yards of debris. If you drove around the city yesterday, you probably wouldn't believe that because of how much debris is left. But there is a lot to clean up here after Laura. There's certainly going to be a lot to clean up after Delta as well. And just like Jim was talking about, all the work that has already been done, all the insurance claims that have been paid out so people could start the good work of getting their houses back to normal, and now probably having to start over. We've seen the video. We've seen the video of the blue tarps flapping in the wind and people's homes completely exposed because, remember, roofs were ripped off. Those blue tarps were, for some people, roofs, keeping their houses dry, keeping their houses out of the elements. And here now Delta comes in and is blowing a 1-2 punch on this city. Not what they were looking for, and certainly this storm certainly could be a major problem moving forward. Are they going to be worse off after Delta than they were after Laura? It certainly is possible because they were already down. Delta hit them while they were down here because of what happened after Laura. So there's going to be a lot of work to do in this city. I know we're going to be storytelling here over the next several days to keep you engaged in what's going on. Let's go to Steph right now, meteorologist Stephanie Abrams. I'll tell you what, Steph, conditions here in Lake Charles are not great. The power in our hotel here has been coming on and off for the last hour, and we have to believe that's probably going to continue. I know in Louisiana in total right now, more than 81,000 customers without power.
Yeah, shockingly, we still have power at Jennings. I'm not sure how, but we shockingly do. If you've been watching, do you remember me looking and saying, "Oh, there's some debris. Watch out, everybody!" Because I saw something literally flying through the sky, and it seemed as if it was heading towards us. It thankfully stopped before it got to us. But this is it. Do you hear that? This is sheet metal. All right, and think about how sharp the end of that is, and what that could do. Just think about how sharp that's flying through the atmosphere. And I'm actually going to move it out of the way here so it's out of the wind so that it doesn't do any damage or hurt anybody else. But all we have to do is go here, and you see what a difference the wind is. And I'm actually being a little blocked by the building. Safer, is it okay if we go down to this corner? Is that all right with you? All right, I just wanted to check with my photographer. I want to make sure he's always comfortable with what we're doing and he is able to get the shot and stay safe as well. It's a team. I know that you see our faces on TV, but I got to tell you, it is a massive team effort, not only with our crews in the field, but everyone back at work giving us wind gusts. Look at this wind. This is the worst we've seen, the most consistent, strong wind we've seen right out of the east, right up the street. Takes your breath away. Whew. Sometimes you just got to get your breath. Now, it's been like this. This is the worst of the weather. It's made landfall in Clouillot, Louisiana. We will get into the eye. Things will get a lot better. This wind, however, is driving that rain so strong, it stings any exposed skin. And believe it or not, these power lines have been bouncing around, but you can see there's a bank. I'm going to put my back to the wind for just a minute because it stings a bit. You see that bank? The lights are still on. I can see down the street, another building down the street, the lights are still on. Pretty impressive that we have yet to lose power. The visibility, obviously, you can barely see down the street. You know, it is very hard to see with that wind-driven rain. And thankfully for us, it's not going to continue to stay like this for too much longer. But unfortunately, our friends to the north, you will be experiencing what you see here. If you live to our north, this thing is moving north. All of this rain and wind is going north with this system. Now, obviously, as this hurricane interacts with land and we get the friction and the shear kicking in, it's going to slow down the winds. But it takes a minute for hurricanes to wind down. It's nice that we got a little minute there to get a break from some of those strong winds as well. Say it one more time, Kelly. I'm so sorry. It's a little hard to hear. Whew. All right, so what we want you to do is listen to the wind, listen to the rain, and also some of the sheet metal that we hear flapping as well. Whew.
Is that neck carbs or toast?